The story of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary.
Subscribe to our channel to receive more content like this.
Today, we're going to hear the inspiring story of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, a woman who lived a life filled with compassion, kindness, and unwavering faith. Her story might be over 800 years old, but the lessons it teaches us are timeless. Elizabeth was born in 1207 in the royal city of Poznan, Poland, into a life of privilege. She was the daughter of King Andrew II of Hungary and Queen Gertrude, so she was a princess from the very start. Her life should have been one of luxury, with palaces, fine clothing, and all the comforts money could buy. But Elizabeth's heart was different from what you might expect from royalty. At the age of 4, Elizabeth was sent to the court of a noble family in the distant land of Thuringia, which is in modern-day Germany. This was common in royal families. Marriages were often arranged to strengthen political ties. Elizabeth's parents had arranged for her to marry Ludwig, the son of the Count of Thuringia. But even as a little girl, Elizabeth had a deep sense of compassion. She was kind, gentle, and concerned for the poor. Her time spent at the Thuringian court was where Elizabeth's heart began to truly grow in a way that would shape the rest of her life. As Elizabeth grew older, she became a beautiful young woman, admired by many. But beauty, wealth, and power meant little to her. What she saw around her instead was suffering. She noticed the poor and the sick, the ones who had no voice and no help. Elizabeth couldn't just stand by and do nothing. One day, while walking through the streets of the city, she saw a group of beggars. Moved by their misery, Elizabeth took off her royal cloak, which was made of fine cloth, and gave it to them to keep them warm. Her compassion was unmatched. She didn't just feel sorry for the poor, she acted. And as she did, word began to spread of her generosity. But the real turning point in her life came when she married Ludwig, the man she had been betrothed to all these years. Though he was a noble and powerful man, Ludwig shared Elizabeth's passion for caring for those in need. Elizabeth and Ludwig were married when she was just 14 years old, and together they had 3 children. But their life, though filled with love, was not without challenges. Elizabeth continued her work for the poor, but her actions weren't always understood by those around her. One of the most famous stories of Elizabeth's life happened one winter day when she was carrying bread to the poor. As she walked through the palace halls, her husband's soldiers stopped her. They thought she was sneaking food from the royal stores. When they demanded to see what was in her cloak, she opened it, and to their surprise, the bread had miraculously turned into roses. Some say it was a divine sign. Others say it was simply a miracle. Either way, Elizabeth's faith was unshaken. But her life wasn't just filled with acts of charity. Elizabeth also became a spiritual woman. She spent hours in prayer, and her devotion was so deep that she often fasted and lived in simple ways, even though she was a queen. As the years went by, Elizabeth's life took a difficult turn. Ludwig, her beloved husband, went off to war, leaving her in charge of the estate. While he was away, Elizabeth worked even harder to care for the poor, visiting them in the hospitals she had helped establish, bringing them food, medicine, and comfort. But then tragedy struck. Ludwig, her husband, died suddenly during the war. Elizabeth was devastated. She was left a widow at just 20 years old, with 3 young children to care for. The loss was crushing. Yet even in her grief, Elizabeth remained faithful to her calling. After Ludwig's death, Elizabeth faced tremendous challenges. The noblemen of the court, seeing her as a young widow with no power, soon turned against her. They took away her wealth and her royal privileges, forcing her to live in poverty. But rather than let bitterness or anger take root, Elizabeth continued her life of service. She gave everything she had to the poor and the sick. And eventually, she joined a community of women dedicated to helping the less fortunate. She spent her final years working with the Franciscan order, living a life of prayer, poverty, and charity. Elizabeth died at the young age of 24, just a few years after her husband's death. Though her life was brief, it was incredibly impactful. She had touched the lives of countless people with her kindness and generosity. Her story became known throughout Europe, and in 1235, just 4 years after her death, she was canonized, declared a saint by the Catholic Church. Elizabeth's legacy lives on today. She is the patron saint of the poor, the sick, and the oppressed, and her example continues to inspire people around the world. Her life teaches us that true greatness is not found in wealth or power, but in compassion, humility, and service to others. The story of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary reminds us that even in the most difficult circumstances, we can find ways to help others. Her life shows us the power of kindness, the importance of faith, and the beauty of living a life dedicated to others. It doesn't matter where we come from or how much we have. What matters is how we choose to love and serve the people around us. Saint Elizabeth may have lived centuries ago, but her story is timeless. We all have the potential to make a difference, just as she did, one act of kindness at a time.